So the idea is we now live in a hybrid life to which both life online and life offline are now intertwined together, which is already part of our identity. And sometimes I call it an Asian skewers, right? Where work, grocery, school, family, church are already tied together, pierced through together, and to the point there's no already distinction when it comes to work. Even when you say I'm just going to work, yes, you can now work anywhere. You can work in different co-working spaces through digital means, virtual reality, even different parts of not just parts but even the realms of these digital spaces or cyberspaces. You can now buy online through grocery, you can attend a school, can academy for free, and you can even enjoy your time together, bonding, watching World Cup through digital means as well, and even attending church. We now have the hybrid option of doing live stream worship, online worship, or just virtual reality church itself. So there are many things that are now intertwined together because of digitality, to the point that almost 70, not almost, but 73.8% of the total population of the whole world are now online. They are connected online. People today are now connected in the internet. Now, and if you're going to want some more statistics about this, even though in the States, there's I think 7 hours per day they are spending their time online. 7 hours per day. That's almost 8 hours. And for the Filipinos, in the Philippines, we are spending an average of 9 hours or 9 hours and almost 10 hours every single day online. And sometimes the funny part here is that because of slow internet, maybe we're waiting to like wait to it's logging the buffering, and we were waiting for it to start again, or disconnection and so on, intermittent internet. But that's it, part of the reality. But the point is, people today in this generation, not just in this generation but in the but generation spanning not just in the Gen X, but even especially up to Gen Beta. No, we no longer have just Gen Z. We already have Gen Alpha and Gen Beta, to which even Miss Rachel, Blippi, and other YouTube vloggers and YouTube learn teachers, educators are even the audience that they have are these people, Gen Beta and Gen Alpha. So the point is, people are now online. 73.8%. They are online. We are online. And what do we mean by that? What do we mean by we are online? The we are online means that digitality has become the cultural language of our time. It is not just uh, the first speaker rightly says that it is not just a part of us, but it is a need for us to learn. Because, for example, if we are Bible translators, if we wanted to share the gospel with another person, the first important thing is we need to learn their language. And it's also the same in the digital culture sense, that in order for us to really be effective when it comes to our orality, storytelling, and in the way we share and express different ways of expressing beyond just text and books or pamphlets. We need to understand and we need to recognize that first and foremost, digitality is now the language of our time. Just like us, many of us, we were born before of already wearing eyeglasses, wearing different tools uh, in our homes. We have clothing, we have slippers, flip-flops. The same thing with the generation who has been born. Nowadays, it's called the digital natives. Yes, many of us, Gen X, millennials, we were digital migrants, with the digital immigrants migrating from the offline world. Now we are now online and trying to balance the tension of living in both sides. And also we need to somehow understand Gen Z people, right? Because while Gen Z children or Gen Z people are learning the digital culture, we ourselves are also learning the digital culture to the point that the Gen Z do not actually have someone who would teach them, because we ourselves in millennials and Gen X, we or even boomers, we ourselves are also learning the culture. But again, MIT people says that we now live in the digital age where digitality is already our cultural language. And what do we mean by that? Again, digitality almost often speaks when it comes to our identity. And what do we mean by identity? I think the best person whom I can cite here is Morpheus from Matrix. I don't know if you like Matrix. I like Matrix so much. And this is what he said when it comes to digital identity. When Neo finally enters this loading program, and Neo was like, "Where am I? What's happening? How come everything changes so fast?" And Morpheus explained, your appearance now inside the matrix or inside the loading program is what we call the residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self. It may not be the real self of yourself, but it is an extension of yourself. And that's why I somehow find this, if you're going to have a thesis in this presentation, the thesis that I would like to make is that the digital self is an extension of one's identity. It is part of who we are. The cybernautics believe that our phones, our smartphones, are now an extension of ourselves. We somehow do not move around. We cannot communicate without it anymore. It extends our voices. Whenever you wanted to speak to someone, you use your digital phones, you use your smartphones, you use Zoom meetings. If you wanted to extend your memory, you store all your memories inside this tiny bit of disk, what we call flash drive, to which now we easily can access 1 terabyte to 2 terabytes in Best Buy, in different marketplaces, in Ace Hardware, in CDR King. I don't know if you still have CDR King in the Philippines. It is almost an extension of everything that we have. Whenever we wake up in the morning, not just our phones, you go to your coffee and try to have your own coffee. You have digital coffee machine, coffee maker. You go and try to cook for your food. You have already a digitalized stove, no longer having the gas or the uling, the coals that we have. If you go around and wanted to go from point A to point B, you would travel and use GPS navigation in order for you to go to that certain place. And yes, it somehow affects and influences the way we live as well, because it is part of who we are. And for us, for example, for the Filipinos, it's kind of easy to accept this notion of an extension of identity. And that's what I would like us all to understand today, that there's this idea and that digitality is a part of us, is a part of our extended identity. It's not an alternative identity. It's not a fake identity. It is an extension of ourselves. And Filipinos can accept that easily because of the idea of the kapwa spirituality, to which that's why the Philippines became the social network capital of the world since 2012, and even today we are still in the top 5 of people who uses the social media, because of the idea of kapwa or the shared self, wherein according to Ampeto Campo, one of the historians, uh, he said that we don't see the Philippines as separate islands or archipelago. We don't believe that the Philippines is an archipelago. This is an indigenous perspective. This is a pre-colonial idea. So what we believe back then is that the Philippines is a whole huge massive island that is connected by waters. So we see water as a source of life and movement, and for them water connected rather than separated islands and people. That's why when the Western society comes in, they try to build bridges, the road bridges, because they thought that we are separated. But we have the balangay, right? For the Philippines, we have the balangay, we have the boats. And the boats is our means in order for us to go to the next island, which connects us through the water. And that's why in the Balangay, to what we have now in the modern day, we have the barangay, which is a community, one of the smallest uh, unit when it comes to our social community. Yes, the family is the smallest one, but then the barangay becomes a part of our community. So for Filipinos, we don't even have a a recipe for a single person. Whenever we cook, we don't think of cooking for our own self. We always have a an idea of whenever I cook, I need to cook at least for 5 people, 3 to 5 people, because of that shared self idea, shared self identity. And that's what I'm trying to point out here. That when this is now translated in the digital places, the digital Kapwa identity, it somehow amplifies the sense of connection, the desire, and the sense of being part of a communal collective, and culturally relevant community. And this is somehow similar to the Ubuntu in the Africa culture and the theology of sociality, according to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, that we need to have a life together. And digitality somehow amplifies that connectivity. Yes, there are weak ties that we somehow call it a while ago, but I believe it is in these weak ties that orality can truly flourish and really be effective, not just as a tool, but beyond measures of how we could navigate and even express ourselves and share our stories with other people. Thus, influencers, trend makers, rankings in social media, and mentions. Once you are mentioned in a reel or a post, spark an existential connection. If someone left a group chat, we feel like, what happened? Did we offend at someone? Nagtampo ba ito? If we are not mentioned in the story, oh, why didn't you mention me? I was there. I was part of the story. We wanted always to be part of the story. Politicians tend to optimize streaming as live video over posting an official statement. Instead of them going through the process of posting what do you call it, a textual letters or official memo, what they do is they just go online and live stream. They post. Vico Soto is very good with this one. He uses reels in order to engage not just the community but to really relate and convey what he wanted to say for his community. Even pastors nowadays using reels to convey their points. You know why? Because when I entered the VR spaces, virtual reality worlds, one of these is called Outspace VR, which is no longer continuing. During the orientation in this Outspace VR, it says there, welcome to our community, to your community. And I really love the next sentence that he said there. It says, behind every avatar is a real person. Who you are communicating with, who you are engaging, reacting, liking posts, sharing posts, behind that phone, behind that computer is a real person. And that is why we think that this connection is weak, but never in our mind to think that this is not real. Because when we do this, when we think that this is not real, then the tendency is we are just making it worse. We are just hurting people. We objectify people based on posting, based on liking, sharing, or just because they're just avatars. We perceive them as second class kind of humanity. No, no, no. The version that we have in the digital space is an extension of who we truly are, and behind it is we are who we are, right? And I could go theological when it comes to Imago Dei, but that's another session for another time. So people think that's why they tend to be hesitant when it comes to digitality, because they think that, and I'll use some jargon here, it's called the Gnostic partialism. People think that it is in the digital space you become spiritual, or in a sense you become Gnostic, Gnosticism. to which believes that you don't believe no longer in the incarnational realities. But if you're going to really think it deeper, digitality is truly material. Digitality is physical. It runs through the cathode rays or the RJ45s, the fiber optics, which is also physical. It functions in the 1010 bits and binary system of information technology. It is in the reality of physicality that digitality is part of, and to which I say it is enfleshed realities. It is incarnational and truly real. It is not Gnostic. It is not just spiritual or mystic. It is real in a sense that we live here as part of our reality. To which I believe when we recognize this thought that I've been sharing since a while ago, that there's this proof that the vital part of digital identity in the mission of the church, to which in Asia Evangelical Alliance, speak that a recent report from Asia Evangelical Alliance's letter in 2021 show how digital technology impacts ministerial practice, faith, and spiritual growth in today's culture. I'm not just only going to focus on the evangelical part. We can also see this in the Roblox. We have the Roblox Jesus, to which this Confradia de San Agustin in Manila, they utilize the space of Roblox community to catechize their children on the Nazareth, the Black Nazarene, during the parade, during the time of the season about it. And this has been happening, I think, for 4 years already. And there's a massive people following the Roblox Jesus, specifically in the Confradia de San Agustin. There's also this TikTok Jesus, to which this TikTok Jesus is obviously made in AI. And yet, whenever this speaks, and whenever they listen to this, posted since 2023, that it already garnered, as of last year, it garnered 23 million views with 3.5 million likes. And when you go to the comment section, many people would say, Amen, amen. Yes, I agree. Yes, I accept you, Jesus. Yes, I believe in you. Enter my home, Jesus. And yet we know that this is what? A mere AI picture. No? So the point is communication in digitality is no longer just communication. It is something deeply part of not just connecting with to us, but the sense that we are shared self. We have the life together. Now, just to give you some practical parts of this, I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm talking fast here. We can just go and ask me later on. But so how do we do this? If we recognize this, let me just give you a short. I believe most of those people who are attending are uh have the background of being at the church. So Sung Guyang, he shared a digital homiletics, to which in order for us to really be effective when it comes to communicating our stories, our thought process, or even our expressions. There's at least five. He listed many styles, but I just chose this because this is more relevant in the orality context. The first is the podium style. You still somehow keep the traditional pulpit and a podium. You set up a camera over you. But this time, listen to this, in the stand attention span is vital here. Now, back then, I also have a degree in education. So I know that between 7 to 15 minutes, the attention span of a child is important, because once you arrive and still did not catch the attention of that child within between 7 to 15 minutes, that person will no longer listen to you. That it also goes the same way when it comes to preaching. And in our church, in an era of TikTok, Instagram, and Reels, and YouTube Shorts, on which video clips run only 15 seconds to 10 minutes. If you, in the first 3 seconds, this is important, in the first 3 seconds in Reels, if that Reel didn't connect and seems not relevant for you, you just swipe down. And the tendency is you would doom scroll, and that's the problem. You dead scroll until you fall asleep. So mostly less than 1 minute. Of course, I don't encourage that preachings would be less than 1 minute, no? Less than 15 minutes. What I'm trying to say here is this. Why not let us also shift the way how we do teaching, we do preaching. Instead of the sole 30 minutes or sole 1 hour lecture, let's do it in an episodic preaching, like how Netflix do it, right? In Netflix, you don't just watch one movie that is 2 hours or more. What they do is they cut these 2 hours into 30 minutes per episodes, and that's how they win their people, they win their audience. In the same way, if we are going to preach, I'm not saying that when you preach you cut, or you make it in an episodic sense, because again, this is in the context of digitality. If you are still in the traditional sense of doing it in person, I don't suggest you to do this, okay? This is again, okay, to clarify, in the context of digital spaces. Or the conversation style. Storytelling can be practiced even inside the church, and then have a recording, audio recording. It can be a podcast interview style. In conversational preaching or teaching, we may conceive preaching as a rhetoric of listening. It's more of us listening. It's more of us learning from the people. There's this called complete incompleteness, right? That even if you didn't actually share the whole point that you wanted to share, as long that that the person felt that they have been heard, then that's already a win-win for us. Listening to the whole congregation, or a round table kind of setting. So podcast people are now using that. Reporter style. Preaching in the style sounds like fact-based. Live reporting. They uses visual arts, experience, stories of people, images, flashcards. They have the up-to-date social cultural relevance. The Zoom style. I believe in Zoom style, and I love how Daniel and Chaka did this a while ago. In Zoom style, the goal here is actually hospitality, right? You don't want the awkward silence of, at least in the 15 seconds, 1 minute, people getting in, waiting for the time to start, and you don't want to have that awkward silence. And that's why we need to know that Zoom style has the point of hospitality, friendship. I'll share your stories, comment on chat box, share emojis, do reactions. The preacher chats with listeners as a good friend and hopes to address the concerns of daily life with good sympathy. So, maximum is, again, yeah, that's right, 15 to 30 minutes. Then we enter the breakout session. And finally, the film or video podcast style. This is like a TED conference, like how we usually go whenever we go to YouTube and try to find a certain lecture. Now they start, instead of just monologue, they do a TED conference that stands for technology, entertainment, and design, breaking the fourth or fifth wall, that's what we call. And then our first speaker said it right a while ago. They're trying to touch and penetrate the senses, the five senses of what we have. It can also be through with vlogging style, to the point that whenever you look at the lenses, it feels like I am really communicating to you, and trying to break this fourth or fifth wall, and trying to make sure that I am there with you and you are here with me. We are part of this. Now, that's the practical side of us recognizing digital identity as part of who we are, and applying orality, in a sense of making sure that it could flourish in these kind of spaces. But again, there's also the idea of the need to really go where the people are. And I don't want to end. I'm a pastor, so I don't want to end this without any exhortation, right? So let me use this platform in a sense where when we started a while ago, we have seen that more than 70%, 75%, almost 75% of people in this world are now online, and that's 8 billion plus people. 75% are now online. God tells us, Jesus tells us to go where people are, to go and make disciples where these people are. We are not told to let them come or to invite them to the church immediately and then we make them disciples. No, no. Jesus is telling us to go where people are, and now today people are now online. 75% are now online. But sadly, our church, our communities, ourselves are still offline. We are not doing anything about this because we are anxious about it. We are scared. We fear this. But if you're going to look at it, even Apostle Paul uses technology in order for him to share the gospel. He uses the Appian Way. The Appian Way is the Pax Romana season, the Romans road, to which the military uses that advanced technology in order for them to go from point A to another place. And Paul have used that and engaged and even have utilized such technological advancement. He uses books and parchment. And Michael Haykin says that, church historian Michael Haykin said that a parchment is, or a papyrus is very expensive back then. And that's why we need to go and make disciples online, not just in our offline spaces. But why do we need to do so? And I won't elaborate in the next part. I will just list this. Why do we really need to go where people are and make them disciples there as well? Because of these 7 deadly digital sins, to which I made. Uh, Fake news, deepfake, pornography, OSEC, selective posting, online hoarding, media addiction, piracy, plagiarism, and cyberbullying. These are the 7 deadly digital sins that we have nowadays if we are not going to really engage online and we miss the part of making disciples online. Now, this how I wanted to end. Whenever you try to find a restaurant, right, or online, you don't nowadays you don't just go directly to the restaurant. No. First you go online, you check the reviews, you check the feedbacks, you check what hours they are open, they close, what's their menu. You go online, everything you go online. But you don't stay online, right? Whenever you try to look for a restaurant, once you found your best restaurant, you don't just go online and stay online and eat the food online. No, you go there. You go there to the restaurant. You go offline. You go in person. And finally, once you're in the restaurant, you order the food based on the product that you have searched, which is the best menu that they have or best food that they serve there. And once you try the food, then you finally say, finally, this is what completes my joy. Also the same when it comes to online dating. I don't know if you have experience online dating. You meet someone online. You talk to that person for months, for weeks, and after that you agreed that you somehow fit together. You have that connection. But you don't stay online. You don't just continue for another year, for another 3 years, just communicating online. The next move is for you to go to that person and talk to that person offline, in person. And that's how you proceed having the completeness of your joy. This is the same way as how Apostle John did it. He said, I have much to write to you, but I do not want to use paper and ink. He was using this technological advancement of paper and ink. He wasn't dismissing the reality. He knows that this is part of an extension of his voice, that whenever he writes something to them, it is part of who he is and what he wanted to share with them. But like take note of this. He didn't stay connecting via the paper and ink. Instead, he said, I hope to visit you and talk with you face to face. I want you to not just stay online, but also go offline. Because why? Because for many of us, the completion of our joy, the completion and the fulfillment and the flourishment of the ministry that we do is once we are now together face to face. And I believe in this digital space, we don't just stay online, but rather we live a hybrid life. right? An online life and an offline life that is intertwined together. But do not just merely stay online. Make sure that this both have the balance in order for us to have a flourishing ministry or missions in life.